Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to What's on Your Radar, the Simply Cyber show that brings senior industry professionals on to talk about what is important to them, their eye this week, what is on their radar. It's the way to finish the week, especially if you love cybersecurity. Nothing better than 4 o'clock cybersecurity stream followed by happy hour. Maybe you tip back a couple sodas. I don't know, whatever you're into. We're joined by Don Weber of Cutaway Security, industrial control system superhero, and Eric Taylor, ransomware's least favorite superhero because he straight crushes it every single time. Thank you guys for being here today for this episode of What's on Your Radar. We're going to start with Don Weber. Don, why don't you talk about what's on your radar?
Well, thanks. Thanks for having me back for another episode. And yeah, absolutely. As it says right there, I've been thinking about compliance, and I just got back from Orlando, where I was attending the SANS ICS Summit, and specifically there, not only for the summit, but also for the training. I took the ICS 456 class, which is the NERC SIP class. Because I've been dealing a lot with utilities, and I'm hearing a lot of terms and them making references and also implementing security requirements that are defined by that. And it just, it didn't change my viewpoint on this. It just kind of drilled home how much a culture of compliance, especially associated with regulations, almost forces people into thinking that if they do the bare minimum, they're secure. And compliance doesn't equal security has been a topic that we're talking about, since I started in 2002. When I got into this industry in 2002, the people that I was listening to and being educated by, that's one of the things they hammered home. Compliance is not security. Now, compliance gets you closer. Compliance gives you a good start and a good baseline, but your teams have to understand that the threat actors are going to find the weaknesses. That's what they train to do, take advantage of, and they have all the time in the world to do that. And if you're not thinking like them, if you're not trying to understand other areas and improve upon certain areas that are important with increased risk within your organization, you're not going to be secure. You're going to be compliant, but you're still going to get owned. So, that's what I've been thinking of, and it's been on my mind.
Yeah, I agree 100% with you, Don. I feel like there's actually a systemic problem because the business, for lack of, to generalize, not us, the business has this idea, or it's been hammered home, that this is information security. This is how you do it. Here is the standard. Here's the compliance standard. This is why the government's making you do it. If they wanted us to do more, they would have required more. And that's a really difficult conversation when you're talking to people who don't understand really like threat actors and the complexity of threat actors and how they all operate. So I feel like you're already walking into an argument, not an argument, but you're already walking into a situation where, the person you're speaking to has already made their mind up on what the threshold is of what we're seeking, what the investments should be on what we're seeking. And that's a really tough battle to fight.
Well, and in some instances, it gets even more challenging than that, because people are making choices when compliance is really expensive, and NERC SIP is not cheap. I mean, there's a lot to do and a lot to test and so forth. And if you meet certain criteria, then you're responsible for more compliance. Okay. And so what happens is that the organizations are taking shortcuts. They're like, okay, I won't leverage this piece of technology in this area, so I'm not routable. So there's no routable communications, which means I have to adhere to less standards, which means I don't have to be as secure or compliant within this because it's not routable. And yet there's still ways that, people with knowledge about protocols and communications can find ways to send information there, or own something that controls something that is going over some non-routable protocol, which could have a negative impact. But because they've adhered to the standards and the guidelines, they don't have to do those extra steps. It's cheaper, and It just grates on my nerves sometimes. A lot.
Yeah, we see a lot of businesses that will start doing heavy pushbacks. Like, well, we just passed ISO 901 or 900 or whatever, and it's like, why do we still got to keep doing this effing thing? We just passed it. We're good. No, not really. It's a vicious circle that most C-level entities inside of a business just don't understand. They achieve that hurdle and they think that they're done, and it's not the way.
It's the daily grind that's hard. It's the
Yeah.
grind that's hard. Coming from incident response and stuff like that. I truly like being the white knight, solving the problems, fixing things, identifying things that you can actually have a positive impact on. And once you're done, you're like, man, our team did great. We all feel good about it. Now let's get back to that daily grind that just drags us down day after day. And it's a difficult mindset.
Documentation. Excuse me.
Exactly.
Well, and I want to point out too, another like major problem with compliance, especially for people who don't know this or work around compliance or have been around and got gray hair at this point. One of the problems is, the business can get like a authorization stamp that they got audited and they're fully compliant, but the problem is you have to be comprehensively compliant. Like you can't just be compliant in the main corporate office and then the 32 satellite offices are wild west doing whatever they want, because they all have hookbacks into the corporate office. But I feel like, at least in my personal experience, I see that all the time, where it's like the auditors go to HQ and do the audit there, and it's all the pretty stuff and it's all configured correctly. And everywhere else, the sales guys who are on the road, their machines are hot messes. Like, the 3-person site that you acquired, like this small business, and never really fully integrated them. You're like, oh, we don't talk about Bruno. It's like that, you know what I mean? Like that should be in scope of compliance, but auditors are human and they kind of defer to the business to tell them what the scope of their audit should be sometimes.
Well, I mean that's actually a good thing about NERC and a part of the starting process for doing it is defining everything, is identifying everything that's responsible, categorizing it correctly, providing good guidance on how to categorize it. So NERC really is a good thing. And it's made our whole critical infrastructure from the utility side. It has made it more secure, but at the same, so it's so they don't fall into that trap necessarily because they've built that into the process. But it's still breeding the bare minimum in some organizations that aren't mature.
Yeah, absolutely. Eric, any final thoughts? I mean, like, let me ask you this, Eric. How many ransomware incidents have you gone into where the business was completely befuddled because they were compliant with security and they could not understand why they were victimized?
I've got 2 of them this week. So there you go. They're like,
Okay.
literally, they self-hesitated to 800-171. They really weren't complying with 800-171, but they said they were. So there you go.
Yep, there it goes. I mean, that's unmistakable evidence that compliance is not security. If you're getting compromised, again, you can't be fully secure, right? We can't achieve full
Yeah,
security.
you're going to get compromised.
Yeah, but of course, I'm on this mission, Don. I don't know if I've ever told you this. I'm on this mission to redefine our industry to cyber resiliency, like abandon cybersecurity, and I work in cyber resiliency, but it's I'm alone on that bus. Nobody is on the bus with me. So it's a lonely road.
All of industrial controls are on that track. That we don't necessarily talk about it like that. Internally, they do. It's all about resilience, availability. That's the actual goal. And security is support. It's just unfortunate that some people come into the industry thinking that. Because a lot of the security people are really smart around technologies and so forth, and they see some choices that are being made that they're not used to. And some risk acceptance that just boggles their mind. And they get this, they take this superior stance when they see what they think are weaker implementations. And they don't realize that security is to support the resilience, as you're talking about.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, Mr. Taylor, I'm curious, Eric of Barricade Cyber Solutions, what's on your radar?
Well, before I get started, because Don, I think, said Sands, and we're a huge Sands guy, and in Signal, I got to give a shout out to my FOR 508 teammates, Vito from Italy, and some of the other my classmates are in there. Like they want a shout out, so shout out to my 508 class. So how you guys doing? There you go. I accomplished that. But anyway, but we're still seeing, especially with some of the ransomware cases that we've been seeing in the past couple. I got every time you do this, I got to shift my seat over. um, but every time, or the past couple of them, we're seeing a growing problem with cybersecurity in the hybrid world between you know and companies just drop shipping their devices out to their end users and or the BYOD devices, things of that nature, being able to access corporate resources in an uncontainerized fashion. Um, the case that we're working right now is really interesting and things I could talk about a little bit because we're not under attorney-client privilege on this one, but where they were using Defender 365, they were trying to implement Defender, but doing a very poor job of it, even though they had an E5 license, so they should have had all the protections of the world. But as we know, unless you turn on and configure these things, it's not going to work. But one of their kids was downloading from some Tor site and infected their freaking network, got into that end user's device and came across the VPN back in and then infected their whole thing. So that wasn't an interesting investigation that I was having fun doing. But it just seems like, we see in the news right now where a lot of companies are starting to mandate employees to actually go back into the organization. Some are staying hybrid. We're definitely staying remote. But I guess I just want to get a feeling from the chat and those who are actually, in this space. What are y'all's thoughts on, the remote workforce and securing it and making sure things stay secure, right? I mean, we're putting in some policies where, you can't connect into the VPN unless you have certain things. You can't even log into your workstation unless you have certain applications installed and they are updated and Windows is updated, things of that nature. So there is technologies there, but there may be something out there that I'm not thinking of or just different thoughts altogether.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I can speak to this initially, but I'd be curious what Don's seeing from the industrial control system as I've begun to realize that OT and IT are now commingled, and with COVID, I'm sure some of the engineers were working remotely and just remoting in. But so the hybrid world, obviously, Microsoft Azure, O365, like there's tons of cloud-based solutions, but I would definitely look at Azure as kind of like a ground zero because regardless of what size organization you are, the way that Microsoft has begun pricing and the upgrade paths for like Exchange and for server, the people coming off of like 2008 R2, which can't even integrate with Azure MFA. Like there's tons of reasons for businesses to go up to Azure. I actually think it's presenting a lot of additional risk to organizations simply because, and I'm, to kind of open this further in discussion, a lot of people who are senior IT people, right? They are looked upon to mentor junior staff and to handle the big problems. Like, okay, hey, we're going to go to Azure. Oh, we're going to lift and shift our data center up to Azure. Like, Carl, you're our senior guy. We need you to kind of set this up and then make sure it's right and then have the junior staff figure it out. Okay, no problem. Well, the thing is, a cloud infrastructure is wildly different than an on-prem infrastructure. It is not just a data center in the cloud, especially when you start dealing with platform as a service services instead of putting a web server on a Microsoft Office server OS and then spinning up that server. You can just spin up a web server, right? Same with like Exchange server. You're not managing Exchange server. You're configuring Exchange at the application level. So with all due respect, the IT admin who's got 35 years experience, typically, not in all cases, but typically that old dog does not want to learn a whole new tech stack. They are comfortable, they understand what they're doing, and they feel like they got it. I got it. I understand cloud. And really, because cloud's a whole new paradigm, I think that that's actually presenting a lot of additional risk because of misconfiguration. We see S3 buckets, Elasticsearch, queries open up to the internet, all this crap. Even myself, in my previous experience, I had to build a FISMA enclave, completely buttoned off from the rest of our network because our network was never going to be FISMA. And I worked with them. I built it in Azure, and my IT counterpart spun up the servers, and they got issued immediately public IPs immediately. And then I immediately saw, before I even put data on it, I'm like doing the test stuff, and immediately I see like Iran, Brazil, Pakistan, like everything's just hammering against it within like 15 minutes. I'm like, bro, you are killing me. Like, can you, you know what I mean? And it's not their fault. It's just a different paradigm. And I feel like, to get to your point, it's going to be a higher risk. Okay, Don, I've done flipping out for now.
There's so much to unpack from all of that. So let's talk about the remote, right? So from the remote aspect, my personal experience, I did that when I was a senior manager for incident response for Warner Brothers for 3 years. Obviously, they were in Burbank. I'm in South Texas, and I was flying out there once a week, every month, to be on site and to demonstrate presence with the team because the team was on site. They were trying to move remote. There's certain things I think you can do. So there's so many challenges about that I think a lot of people, the last 2 years had a crash course in this. There's first of all, you have to be mature enough. You have to be adult enough to be able to work by yourself. Because not everybody is going to work remote and stay on camera all the time. YouTube is too easy. TV is too easy. Reading a book on the side is too easy. Your kids running in and out of your office, if you have one, a lot of people's offices are going to be on their actual, countertops or their kitchen tables and stuff like that until they can get it. Managing those people, managing teams that are remote is extremely hard. Just the miscommunication from emails and instant messengers alone, when you can't see people's faces, it's so easy to say, oh my gosh, this person's against me, when you can't hear the tone of their voice, whether they're actually being encouraging or they're mad or they're just making a point, and it's difficult to, and most of the people that I managed and dealt with, none of them wanted to come on camera. And you've seen me, I'm constantly on camera because we need that for the communication. You need the facial expressions, and people that want to be shy or whatever, they're doing themselves a disservice if they want to work remotely. So that's my first thought about that. It's, even after 2 years, I'm willing to bet there's a lot of teams out there that would be better off going back to coming into the workplace because of that dynamic you can't understand and see. Okay. As far as industrial control systems, we've been doing stuff remote for a long time, basically from an administration standpoint. But just like every other organization, the need to move operators and engineers out of the work environment is pretty important as well, to stay safe. Fortunately, we're getting back, moving away from that. But that connectivity is not going to go away. That ability to, if there's remote access that's being provided into some of the control networks, that's still there. But certainly many organizations are looking at, and hopefully they're implementing that remote access correctly. They've got decentralized domain, Active Directory domains for authentication, meaning that their corporate network is separate from their control network. They've got separate MFA sometimes. Some organizations can't afford to, but as long as you're using one, is good. But all organizations should be thinking about their remote workforce, like you're talking about, which is when they come into the organization, they shouldn't just be able to just go straight into a server. They should be going to a jump host that has the tools for them, the software that they're using, they have installed on their actual local systems. They shouldn't be using that to administer, applications. Everything should be administered from a jump host and configured from there. And actually, if you set up certain technologies right, like Citrix and some of the other ones, you can actually, you can wipe that session away, meaning that every time they log in, they have a clean, pristine system. If the malware was on, if they did get malware on there, then that goes away. We talk about zero trust, and that's a challenge to implement even in a corporate environment where people are talking about it in an industrial environment. We'll see if we get there. Actually, Eric, has zero trust stopped ransomware?
I better answer this carefully because I haven't had any sort of DFIR, whether it's PCI compliancy, insider threat, ransomware, that has been under a real zero trust infrastructure. Now, maybe because I'm too small, I'm not as big as Carl Mandy and some of these other folks that would potentially get those cases, but I have not seen any of those. I've seen people say they're like 80 or 90% of the way to zero trust. I'm like, after I get in there and look around, I'm like, not really, but
right,
maybe so.
Yeah,
I don't have any insight either way.
And I think that's the point, that even, you can say zero trust all you want, but correct implementation across all of your infrastructure, we're still trying to figure that out. So people that are talking about zero trust and control environments don't understand that most organizations haven't implemented correctly in their corporate environment, which is where they're going to cut their teeth on that implementation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, most people will actually see zero trust as just MAC address whitelisting at the switch level, right? Oh, we're not letting anything connect to our network. What about all these 13 applications you don't know what the hell it is?
Uh-huh.
Oh, we had a demo 3 years ago and we never uninstalled it. Great.
So I'd like to comment here for a second. I can't believe, just as a programming note, I can't believe the two of you allowed me to flip out for a good minutes talking about hybrid IT environments when the conversation was hybrid employee access.
It's your show, man. It's your show. So
you were just like me. I'm just letting them roll. I'm like, all right, no worries. I mean, to be honest, it's relevant because it, hybrid IT, hybrid. I mean, it flows. It wasn't exactly what I was talking about, but it applied.
And technologies that people are implementing for this, a lot of it goes back to the cloud. Switching to that infrastructure, and this is a huge challenge. What you were talking about, actually, Gerald, which is why I said there's a lot to unpack. The control environments, they're going to be moving heavily to the cloud. There's going to be a big push. You're going to be hearing about it. Vendors and integrators are moving this way. All of the standards are starting to incorporate cloud considerations. And for the organizations that don't understand their current technologies, or they're using their control personnel to administer things, meaning that they're administering the Windows operating systems and the databases and the web servers, and they don't understand how to do that securely, they're going to be the same people implementing the cloud technologies, and everything that you're just talking about, that they're not even going to know that that's a concern. And so that's part of my concern as people are moving forward. The people that are asking these or looking for these technologies, they don't know the proper questions to ask. And I highly encourage them to, hey, you need to bring on a cloud administrator expert and security expert onto your team if you're going to start going down this path.
Yeah, I definitely tell people, like, if you're trying to get in the industry right now, learning cloud is a huge advantage because you're not competing with someone with 30 years of cloud knowledge, right? It's so new that you can't, that doesn't exist. I'll just say before we pivot, like along the hybrid thing, for what it's worth, a lot of businesses, like the big buzzword in like CIO land in 2020 was digital transformation. Oh, it's coming. Like no one knew that the pandemic was going to come, but because everybody started to work remotely, I will say that I found it accelerated significantly the adoption of these kind of hybrid services. And yes, a lot of people were working remotely, but like, I feel like typically something like this would take 10 years and, your Fortune 500 companies would be first, and then maybe some mid tiers like in financial services. And then maybe eventually small and medium might come around to it when it becomes a commoditized service that like MSPs are just offering as like a throw in. So because of COVID, or because of the pandemic or whatever. I don't know if there's like banned keywords that I'm not supposed to say on the YouTube, but like because of this thing, everybody had to get on board. And I feel like it's like shaking like a tree or something, and all the loose apples kind of fall off. Like the people who was going to get popped, like it get popped, and then like, okay, so like, here's the problem. We got to fix this problem. We got to go. And like you said, Citrix implementations, that's a great thing. People who are using like Microsoft RDP to remote in, or having MSPs RDP in that way. I feel like they got kind of knocked around early on, and it kind of led to these problems getting fixed in a more accelerated fashion. Still a lot of growing pains, obviously. But I do feel like the hybrid workforce, I know I see a lot of people in chat talking about, in the professional services industry, being on camera, being on site. Don, I understand if you're one person working remotely and the whole team is together, that's a very difficult thing to be like the odd person who's not part of that cohesive unit. If everybody's remote, I feel like, you're all kind of together. And, and if you're all obviously in the same room, you're all together just the same. So it is kind of situational, I would argue, but I do appreciate that the digital transformation was accelerated and we were able to get some quick lessons learned from that. All right. Any final thoughts, Eric or Don, on hybrid workforce before we pivot into the spicy 101?
I'm going to lounge back and watch this.
All right. So check it out. All right. Here's what's on my radar. And I'm going to try to be super cool. But what is the deal with bug branding, right? Am I right, people? Right? So check this out. Earlier this week, some higher ed academics, let me get rid of this bug branding thing. Some higher ed academics found a vulnerability that they've termed Hertzbleed. Now, this vulnerability is essentially probably highly unlikely to ever be exploited, but the idea is that you can monitor a processor and look at the energy coming out of it, like essentially like the pulses of energy, the zeros and ones, and be able to discern what the cryptographic key is that's being used to decrypt the data going in and obviously get encrypted coming out. So you can get the key, effectively compromising the confidentiality. Once you get the key, you can decrypt everything, you win. Okay. To me, the reality of this attack is very limited. I'd imagine that you'd have to get either root access to the box to install software or have physical access. Even the exploit. What?
You're thinking about it wrong. You're thinking about.
Okay, go ahead.
So you're thinking about this attack in a live environment scenario, meaning that that somebody's got access to the system. Okay, so now they're going to start monitoring the CPU, and certainly there might be instances where you can do that. Okay, where this is important though is for those applications, for those systems that the certificates and other keys and passwords and stuff like that are burned in, so they're hard coded, so they can't. It's difficult to modify and change. Okay, those are the things that are bigger risk around this, because now if you can get that system offline and do this research offline, and you can get that key, you have access to everybody else's until they can rotate that key out, and that's a part of the problem.
Okay, so you're saying
a little bit more sense?
No, it does make sense, but are you saying that the vendor would burn one key into all of their appliances?
It wouldn't be the first time.
They're always doing that. Yeah, no, and that's a part of the problem is that, when people implement technologies, they think, oh, it's secure. Okay. But doing cryptography is difficult, meaning that, okay, yeah, you have certificates and people have made it easier, but unless you manage those certificates correctly, unless you have some type of rotation, some type of correct deployment, in other words, updating as a revocation of certificates, if you haven't taken that into account, if it's not built into the system, you're going to have to completely update so say they do detect a compromised system. If it's burned in, then they're going to have to update with new firmware or a completely new program, which means that everybody has to deploy it. And when you're talking about systems where, somebody, you get about between 10 and 20% penetration for people either updating the software or burning new firmware, now you have 80% that are still vulnerable. Okay, and so that's a part of the problem. Now, if the software, if the update mechanism has an easy way to rotate that out, doing certificates correctly, then it's less of a risk. You do need to make sure that you're updating and so forth. But there's always going to be somebody that's vulnerable to this. It's not something generally you'll do live, but once you have something, then you might be able to leverage it against other implementations. Does that make a little bit more sense?
Yeah, no, absolutely. It does. I don't know what the practicality, I mean, they did this in, in a controlled research lab, obviously.
And I haven't read that research, so I don't know exactly. But this is it's not a new, these side channel attacks to get cryptographic keys and so forth. They are not. It's not a new technique. But certainly this is just a new instance of it that might be looking at it from a new way. Going back to your original discussion, though, about why people are naming things, and it's as a security researcher, it's hugely annoying to me. I mean, certainly I have a difficult enough time naming the tools that I use to do my research, or to provide the ability to do analysis. But you name a tool because you have to put a name on it, right? If you're going to upload it somewhere. But these are very specifically marketing. These team members, they want to drive a business to them. I mean, it's difficult to say that's a bad thing, especially as a private consultancy. I do want to drive people towards me, but I don't want to say. I do kind of feel like it's like I do roll my eyes when I see some of this, but at the same time, the media loves it, and that's what it is. The media loves a name that they can latch onto, and if you're not whoever names it first is the winner. So 3 people could have done this same type of research, but whoever named it first and got it in the media, they're the ones that are going to be associated with it. So that's the goal of naming these things.
Right. And I'm 100% with you. And thank you for the additional context on the actual attack, because I was playing this off as not, I mean, it's a serious impact. I feel like it's a very low likelihood of exploitation. Maybe that's a bit naive of me. My major concern is bug branding, as it's called. It really started in 2014 with Heartbleed, right? If you're familiar with this particular attack, it was the first one that got a graphic and it's got its own webpage, heartbleed.com. And this kind of launched it. Now, Don says it bothers him as far as like the vulns getting names. I like it only because it becomes easy to communicate to end users, because it's got that, memorable name. Because like, dude, seriously, if you're like, hey, guys, I want to make you aware that CVE 2014-0160 needs to be fixed on your Windows operating system, they're going to be like, shut up, nerd. Like, no, like, I don't know what you're talking about. Right. So I appreciate this, but what got my, sand in my shorts, if you will, is that Hertzbleed, which I don't, again, I didn't think Hertzbleed is a mainstream thing, but did whatever. But then Felina comes out last week, which you guys can't see because my screen is all squished in. But Felina came out last week, and this thing was like, as far as I'm concerned, this was like a immediate, you need to make sure that your environment is clear. This was basically executing the equivalent of macros in Office documents on end users' endpoints, which is like a phishing best practice, right? Like if you're an attacker, enable macros, you can run PowerShell and start pulling down payloads. Felina didn't get a graphic or a bug, you know what I mean? Like, and I'm not saying I want like a t-shirt that has like a Felina logo on it or anything like that, but it just bothers me that we're inconsistent in the market. Like even Kevin Beaumont came up with this Log4Shell, which was hideous, and he actually made it. Oh wait, you guys can't see it. He made this graphic intentionally hideous because he thought no one would pick it up. It was like a joke that he made it, and then it became like the mainstream media bug logo for Log4Shell. But I appreciate the naming and the graphics. Simply, if it's something that you're going to really need end users to engage in, right? Something like what was it, Shell Shock? It was around the SSL. Like end users aren't going to have to deal with that. Like that's IT dealing with that. And I don't know. Like it basically got me upset that Hertzbleed got a logo and Felina did not get a logo. That's where I'm at. Eric, any thoughts on bug branding?
No, I mean, I personally, I'm for it. Like you said, it does help with the communication when you're trying to talk to end users. So, um, yeah, I'm all for it. Let's do it. I mean, anything. The one thing that I always am leery of is, I mean, for us, we talked about this many times here, right? That you talk about ransomware so freaking much, everybody gets numb to it. So
Mm-hmm.
I just want to make sure that we're making whatever we're doing, we're making a positive impact in the education process to get people more secure than just another buzzword that like zero security. Everybody's about zero security, but everybody's trying to sell you a magic pill or a bottle of water that will implement it, right? So um, I just want to make sure that people are not going to get too numb or sanitized to the concept and actually do something about it is my biggest thing.
Yeah. I just wish there were standards, right? I'm a guy of process and order, right? I wish there were standards. Like if it's over 9.5, it gets a logo and a cool name, right?
There is a standard. It's called CVEs. Okay.
No. Yeah, no. Of course, I know, but like a standard for like when you get a logo, and like I'm not saying that the federal government or like the elders of the internet are responsible for making the logos and stuff. I want some standards so we can all agree like this gets a logo and this doesn't get a logo, right? I mean, is it so much to ask for compliance standards? So then
When's the last time you watched the IT Crowd? Pulled that one out of your hat.
Oh yeah, it's a good one.
I know, man.
Have you seen that, Don? IT Crowd?
I enjoy it. My family enjoys it. Yeah, so I've seen it.
Oh, good. Okay.
The elders of the internet. Jiminy Christmas.
Been waiting a minute for that one.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean the fact that the internet can be put in a box and you can walk around with it. That's
with a little LED light. Yeah.
That's so awesome. All right. Well, anything you guys want to share with the community? Well, we got about 26 people hanging with us right now. Any projects you're working on, Eric, or any initiatives you want to share?
I don't think there's anything I can talk about publicly right now, but there's some exciting stuff we're working on, but I'm not sure if I'm allowed to talk about publicly, so I'll hold off.
Okay. Don, what about you? What's cracking in your world?
I mean, it's just trying to put myself out there. Cutaway Security, obviously, finding me on LinkedIn, finding a Cutaway Security on LinkedIn and Twitter. I try to put things out there as I'm working on it. The Cutaway Security GitHub, some of the most recent things that I've been working on. I've been doing a lot of PowerShell and just kind of gathering information from systems for people that don't have the resources, like some type of centrally managed Active Directory, the MECM and the other patch management servers, providing capabilities for people to leverage PowerShell for some of those standalone systems to gather information, do baselining. So there are a couple things out there. I'm always looking for people to test, help me improve upon that, give me feedback and stuff. So I really appreciate anybody that wants to take a look at that.
What kind of skills are you looking for that? And I'm going to link in chat below a link to Don's GitHub or to Cutaway Security's GitHub. Looks like there's some really cool tools in there. If people were going to help you, Don, what kind of skill set would they need to have? Because this is a great opportunity for someone to look into engage in the community.
Yeah, it's just, I do a lot of ad hoc, like as soon as I see a need, I try to script it up and do things. I'm not always consistent with my methodology for programming things. So if you start looking at the different projects, you'll see that I did different techniques to manage it. The NCAS scripts are for information gathering. One of the things I'm looking for is to there's a dev branch of that, which I'm going to start working on so that you can get a baseline of the system. And then once you run it a second time, it will do a diff of the information. So I'm looking for people to help with that. And that goes back to the NERC compliance. They're supposed to be leveraging change management. They're supposed to be identifying when inappropriate changes have been made, not only from a compliance standpoint, but also from a security standpoint. So I'm trying to go down that path. I mean, there's some other things. There's another project, another script in there where you're actually configuring the Windows firewall so that it requires authentication configurations for certain applications. I just need those things tested, and when people find issues, putting issues up on the GitHub. So that's actually what I'm looking for.
That's awesome. I put a link in chat to Don's Cutaway Security Discord server. He's the manager, or moderator, or admin of that server. So it's very easy to get a hold of Don if you're interested in participating. I can't emphasize enough. This is a great way to get engaged with the community. We talk about, like Don, I do talks all the time and like advise people like networking is one of the best things you can do. And it's not about like, hi, I'm Jerry. You're Don. Do you have a job for me? It's not about that. It's about contributing to the collective and being part of something. And I just think what you have here is an excellent opportunity. So I wanted to highlight it. So people are seeing it. Yeah, absolutely. And I put a link to the GitHub as well, so people can see what that is. And don't be intimidated. Don is a very very approachable guy. I like Don. Don, as far as Cutaway Security goes, are you exclusively focused on industrial control systems? Is that something that really only people who are interested in getting exposed to industrial control systems should reach out and try to collaborate with you?
I mean, I've got 20 years of experience doing security research, incident response, forensics, and implementation of tools. Now, my personal focus right now, the domains that I'm excelling at right now are within the control environments, but it's the same technologies in the corporate environment, just more. So I'm more than happy to help with anybody. My goal is to provide back to anybody any question I don't know how to answer. Those are the ones, especially the ones that I'm looking for. I can get you in the contact with the people that do have that experience, or I'll help you research it. So that's yeah. So it's across the board, but I do heavily focus on industrial control environments right now.
Oh, excellent. Yeah, I met you through a network. Actually, I met Mick Douglas, and then Mick Douglas connected me with Don. So it's all about growing that network organically. Jess Bishop actually had a question for you, Don, if you want to hang out. Are you familiar with Adobe processes? I've asked Jess to confirm what she means by Adobe processes, but I figured I'd throw it in case you knew what that meant.
That actually is a challenge for me, because I haven't seen anything specific as to Adobe processes. Now, are you talking about Adobe, like actual executables and issues and vulnerabilities around that? I mean, I've got specific thoughts on Adobe products on some standalone systems, whether or not it's needed. But they, could be talking about processes that are associated with the Adobe enterprises as well. So I don't know exactly what that question means.
Yeah, I've asked her to qualify. She just wrote yes in chat, so I'm not exactly sure. But yeah. So let me ask you, normally we would end the show right now. Eric or Don, do you guys have hard stops right now?
No, let me go grab some beer. Hold on a second.
Yeah,
okay.
I would just work, I'm just going to be working later. So,
okay. Well, so Don, I wanted to ask you a question. So Eric came on Simply Cyber yesterday for a long 1-hour interview, and we walked through a day in the life of a ransomware incident responder. From wake up and you get the phone call to the panicking executive, all the way to negotiating with the ransomware threat actors and stuff like that. I know that you've done incident response, as you said earlier. Have you done it recently? Have you dealt with ransomware threat actors?
Myself, no. I mean, it's almost been 4 years since I started Cutaway and moved back into the offensive side. And actually, while I was at Warner Brothers, it was that whole situation. If did you ever see Band of Brothers? And, when Captain Winters got promoted, and then the battalion commander came up to him and took his rifle away. That's basically what my CISO did to me when I took over the incident response team. He's like, Don, you're not going to be on the queue. You're not going to be in a command shell. Okay. Periodically I was, and I augmented the team when necessary, but that's what it was. It was staff augmentation. So I really did the management, got away from the technical stuff. But and we dealt with a few ransomware incidents. Obviously I can't go into too much detail. No organization is untouched by ransomware. So I haven't specifically dealt with it for a couple of years because I've been on the offensive side.
It's something interesting you just brought up, and I feel like this is a senior level issue, and it's one that no one really talks about. I've never heard anyone talk about this. And Eric, I'm not sure if you've had to deal with this yet in your career, but just because you're hands on keyboard all the time. But at a certain point in a professional's career, they move from hands on keyboard to managing people hands on keyboard, and I went through it. For me personally, it was a very difficult experience. I felt like my technical skills were eroding. I felt like I was less sharp. Technologies were moving, adapting, and I wasn't aware of them. Like you start feeling unconfident in meetings and stuff like that. Did you experience any of that when you not stepped away, but when you basically got your rifle taken away?
And that was for me, or was that for Eric?
It's for you. Yeah. It's for
okay.
you,
Yeah. So first of all, I want to tell Just Ben, yes, the first thing I did was take a picture of the water tower where Yakko, Jacko, and Dot lived. Right. And I was extremely excited about that from the Animaniac. So yeah, absolutely 100%. Going back to it definitely was a challenge. I was working with highly experienced team members, very technical, trying to provide them with guidance and it was difficult kind of keeping up. I was doing a lot of management stuff and keeping track of even stuff that was going on in the industry. I'd find myself falling behind and really leaning on my team to do that. To do that for me, to kind of hey, what's important and stuff like that. And sometimes we just miss stuff. So it's it's definitely something that needs to be taken in consideration when you're moving into some of those leadership roles. The fact that your responsibilities are changing. You're taking care of families now. You're taking care of individuals and leaning on them to provide that technical expertise. Fortunately, a lot of the older stuff sticks with you. So that foundation kind of sticks with you going forward. So if you focus and keep up with your foundation of knowledge, and then that will help you assist your team when they need that troubleshooting, that technical troubleshooting. But the goals of caring for a team and getting them what they need, both from a personal level, from a tools level, from an education level, that becomes some of the most important things when you're filling that role.
Well said and well spoken. It definitely, the responsibility shifts from the responsibility of you to the responsibility of many more, and understanding that you have to get your information a different way and really depend on other people. And that's one thing that
I saw that was one of the first things I saw when I got into this industry. I mean, and I was 33 when I started doing tech stuff, and my first job was with Raytheon. And you start seeing fellows. You go into Raytheon and you see fellows that are, and by fellows I mean people that were technical people for 20, almost 30 years at this point. They're actually listed as fellows within that organization, and you're seeing them. You're seeing the ones that they're like, no, I'm not a team lead. I'm technical, and they're fighting and they're actually, Raytheon was actually trying to move them off of projects because they are fellows. They're too expensive to be on some projects. It's easier to make them the leaders and the leads for that. And they're fighting tooth and nail because they don't want to, they just didn't want to manage people. They didn't want to be responsible for people's lives and going through the rigmarole of getting different all the things that they needed, whether it's training or tools or stuff, medical stuff for their families and so forth. Because that's a huge responsibility. Some people just want to stay technical, and you just have to identify that about yourself. But certainly it's it takes a skill set leading people and managing people, and I do think that there's some difference. I do like, and actually I have it right here. Everybody's got their books about Who Took My Cheese and Minute Manager and stuff like that. And I do highly recommend reading those for people that are doing it. But what I recommend more for everybody, both whether you're being technical or not, if you're going to be a team member or team lead, radical candor. I mean, this, and I've got to reread this. I mean, you can see how much I don't know the last time I tabbed out a book, and I'm going to have to reread this. But a radical candor is extremely useful when you're talking about leadership and team members and being a team member. So I highly recommend that.
Yeah, I just dropped a link in chat to it. I like how they just lean right into kick ass at work. Like,
yeah,
it's no mincing words here. This isn't a corporate retreat, kind of fluffy read. It sounds like this is all about high impact.
Yeah, and Kim Scott, the woman who wrote this, she has led some dynamic teams in some very agile industries, and most specifically YouTube, as it was initially growing and just expanding. She was responsible for some of the teams on there, and you can just imagine the dynamic at Google and trying to corral people while also getting them what they need, so that everybody was successful. And I think she uses some great examples both from Google and some of the other places that she worked or that kind of played into her experiences. So it's a great, highly recommend it. Like I said, I need to reread it.
Awesome. Thanks for that bonus book tip. Chris Weaver also thanks you for the tip, which I love. All right. Whew. All right. So we did radar and then some extra bonus material today, which is fantastic. I think I'm gonna wrap it up here as we come up on the 5 o'clock hour. It's 5 o'clock somewhere, everybody. So if you're into beer, maybe you pop off and have one. If not, maybe you get whatever it is that you enjoy doing to relax a little bit. Hopefully, Don, I know you came on with us and you said you're going to have to work later because of it. Hopefully we didn't push you too far into the evening.
No, not at all.
All right. Wonderful. Eric, thanks so much for being here. As always, Eric's been doing a lot. Barricade's been doing a lot with the Simply Cyber community, and we love it. Don, thanks so much for being here. Guys, Cutaway Security, definitely check it out. Like I said, that Discord server link is in chat. So go check out Don's server and talk to Don. He's a really nice guy and easy to work with. So, all right, that's going to do it for this week's episode of What's on Your Radar. And the final episode, until further notice, as we're shelving this show for a little bit, going on hiatus.
We'll be back with something else. Thanks, Gerald. Thanks, Eric. Good to talk to y'all. And thank you, everybody on the chat.
Absolutely. Take care, everybody. Have a great weekend.